Hello guys, Fatal Amist here, and today I'm going to teach you how to use T6GR. But first I would just like to talk a little bit about what T6GR actually is. It's basically just a new mod to record Black Ops 2 gameplay as either a PNG sequence with all different passes, basically a replacement for the current streams tool that we have out, or as a 3D animation that can be imported to Maya or Blender, and then exported to pretty much any other software that supports FBX. So I'm very excited to be finally releasing this after about 9 months of development. So let's get started. In order to use T6GR, you do need to use Black Ops 2 Redacted. This is just because I don't want to risk anti-cheat stuff on Black Ops 2 Steam anymore. But if there is enough interest, I will consider porting it to support Black Ops 2 Steam. But for now, just use the demo ripper tool and load your demos in Redacted to use T6GR. So to install T6GR, open your Redacted directory and go to plugins. And then in the T6GR folder, you will have this file, t6gr.red32n. Just drag that into the plugins folder and that's installed. So now you can jump into Black Ops 2 and record your clip. Okay, so once you're at the start of your clip, it's time to start making your config. All settings and controls for T6GR are done through console commands. So to set up your config, there's a few devars you should always set, and the first one is T6GR FPS, and most of these are pretty self-explanatory, but this one will just define the frame rate at which to record at. For 3D animation, you probably don't have to go much over 50 or so frames per second, that'll normally be fine. But for just recording normal gameplay, you'd probably want, around 600. But for this tutorial, I'm just going to set it to 60. The next one is T6GR file name. And this is basically just the name to give to the file, obviously. So I'm just going to call this one tutorial clip. Then the next one is optional, you don't have to use it, but T6GR directory will define where to record to. So for now, I will just record to a folder here. And you just copy the directory and paste it here. If you don't want to use this, you can just get rid of it, and by default it will record to the directory of your game install. So next you just have to set the devars for what you actually want to record. This comes in 3 parts. There's 3D, which is the animations, camera, which is the camera, and streams, which is PNG sequence. So first I will set record 3D to 1, and I will set streams to 1, and I will set record camera to 1. Now with record camera, there is also a second setting, which is T6GR export cam. So what this does will export the camera data as a separate file, which can be imported to After Effects. But the camera data is also included in the file that you get for recording 3D. So next I will set up the 3D settings. So 3D has a large number of devars, so I'll just go through them all. Record cam is already set on, so that's good. Next I will set record players, which will just record the movements of players, obviously. Record view model is for the POV weapon. Zombies, obviously zombies is only going to record in zombies mode and it will just record the zombies. So since we're a multiplayer, I won't use that. Record corpses. So by default, deaths will be merged with the player animations, but sometimes if the player respawns before the animation is finished playing, it might get cut off before you want to. So if you record corpses, it'll also record death animations as separate entities so you can get the full animation, but most of the time I'll have this set to 0. Record projectiles is for just grenades and stuff like that, but it will only record grenades that have been thrown after recording actually starts. Like if there's already a grenade in the air when you start recording, that won't be recorded. So make sure that if there's a grenade you want to be recorded, you start the recording before it actually gets thrown. So I will set that to 0 just because there are no projectiles in this clip. Record only visible will only record entities where you have a clear line of sight to the player's origin from the camera. So I'll just set that to 0 for now. You have record submodels. So what a submodel is basically any model that isn't the main model. So for players, their submodels will be the weapons that they're holding and stuff like that. And record kill streaks, that will just record things like your helicopters and dogs and stuff like that. But I will keep that one turned off. Yep, so that's all the devars for 3D. So now I'll set up the streams devars. So in streams there are a large number of passes that can be recorded. So the first one is streams default, which will just record your game as it is right now, no other changes. And then you have green screen, which will just record the green screen of the weapon. It's not a green screen for third person or like character models, it's just for the POV model. And then depth, T6GR streams depth will just record the depth map. And there is a second setting for depth, which is T6GR streams depth distance. And this is basically just if you turn on your depth, it'll just move the threshold backwards and forwards. I like to keep it at around 2000, it seems to work best for me. So I will just set that to 2000. So next up is players alpha. So for the players alpha pass, it will set this up. By default, it does also toggle this to remove some of the extra stuff that'll be annoying in your pass. And then there is a second setting for this pass, which is called T6GR streams player guns. And if you enable that, that will just include the players weapons. So it'll include all these in this pass, which is good for isolating players and having transparent backgrounds. So next up is green players, which if you're using players alpha, I really see no point in using green players as it's just going to be this pass, but you'll get better results out of Luma map. I just kind of included it just in case anyone wants it. So next up is T6GR streams no players. It'll just remove players from the map. So I'll set that to 0 because I don't really need that. T6GR streams no gun will just record a pass of the world but with the gun removed. And next up we have 3 devars that are all very similar. We have T6GR streams wireframe, and we have T6GR streams wireframe world, and T6GR streams wireframe gun. So basically these are all just wireframe passes, but each one is slightly different. You have wireframe, which is just what you have now. Wireframe world will remove the gun, and I'm just going to set all these to 0 because I don't really need that. Next up is T6GR streams green sky, which is again pretty self-explanatory, just green screens the sky out like so. Then we have materials patch, which is kind of I don't really see the point in it, but I included it just in case, which is something most people will probably not use very often. It's just something that's required for normal passes. So this has more settings than just on and off. You have 0, which is just nothing, it won't record that. And you have 1, which will be dynamic models, and then you also have 2, which will be all models. But as you can see, it's kind of a weird pass. I don't know why if someone would use it, but it's there if you want it. So next up we have the normals passes, which are called T6GR streams normals, T6GR streams tangent, we have binormals, surface normals, and light map. All of these devars do also have a secondary setting, which is for the materials patch for that pass, which you can change by taking the name of the normals pass and just adding on the end underscore material patch, and then again 0 for nothing, 1 for dynamic models, and 2 for all models. And then we don't need any of these, but we will also record surface normals, and we will add material patch 2 to that. So that will record both normals with dynamic models and surface normals with all models. And then these normals passes also have one more setting, which is gun in normals, which will just If set to 1, it will include the view model in the normals, and if it's set to 0, it will not include the gun in the normals. That's all the settings for recording both streams and 3D. And there is one last setting that you can set, which will allow you to set an endpoint for the recording to stop automatically. To do that, we use a command called T6GR set end. So to use this, you always have to make sure that at least one time in your game you've skipped backwards in time, because if you don't do that, the timing will be different. So just always skip back at least once, and that will fix that. So then just go to the end of your clip, and I want it to end there, so I'll pause the game, go here and just send a single command T6GR set end, and you'll get this saying that it's been set, and that's all good. If you want to clear this, do set end 0, and that will set it to 0 and it will not automatically stop anymore. Or if you want to set it to end at a very specific tick, you can set that just by typing that in, and it will set it to that. But most of the time you'll probably just use it like so. So then just skip back to where you start your recording, and then to begin recording, always remember to turn off the controls on your HUD, and then to begin recording we just will type demo pause 0 just to make sure that the demo is playing, and then T6GR underscore start. If your game isn't set to automatically stop recording, you can stop it manually by sending the command T6GR stop. But since we've got it set automatically, we don't have to do this. And then to begin your recording, just send the config. And as you can see, it will begin recording each pass individually. This can always take some time just because it's a slow process. And if you don't want it to display every single frame, you can turn that off just with T6GR streams, no flash 1. And then it will just stop displaying everything. But as you can see, it does still record everything in the background, it just won't display it to you. So now that that's finished, as you can see, it's now placed in the directory that we've set. We have two folders, streams, which will have all the passes in it, and the T6GR folder, which will have a number of files in it depending on what you've recorded. So there's 3 different file types here. The first one is T6CR, which is a T6 camera recording, which is the file that you can import to After Effects. Then you have T6GR, which is T6 game recording, which will have all the animations and stuff. And then you have T6GR search string, which is just a text file with a list of all the models that you need to export for use in 3D. If you do want to use the 3D animations, make sure to extract all the required models using either Wraith or Greyhound. So to do this, just load into the game, and using the search string file, just copy that and paste it into the search, and select all of these and export them. And just make sure that you are exporting these in the .se model format. So once you've done that, you are all set and you can close the game. So first I'll show you how to import the camera path to After Effects. So to install the plugin, just go to your After Effects install. And then go to scripts and just drag the T6GR importer script into this folder. And open After Effects. So to import the streams recording into After Effects, you can just import the PNG sequence directly into After Effects. So to do that, just go to the pass that you want. I'll just grab the default pass, and you just go File, Import, select the first one and make sure PNG sequence is checked, and just import that, and it works out just fine. And as you can see, everything's perfectly in sync right from the import, which is nice. So next we'll import the camera data into this. Now this isn't a perfect camera track by any means, but it's decent enough for some simple effects. So you can just go to T6GR importer, and you just need to select the file, and you just need to select the T6GR file that will have been recorded if you've got export cam turned on. So just select that, and the camera data will be imported and ready to use. So I will show you the 3D stuff. So we'll start with Maya. So first make sure that the script is installed by putting it in your Maya's script directory, and wait for Maya to open. So once you're in Maya, make sure you have the plugin enabled by going to Windows, Settings and Preferences, Plugin Manager, and just search for T6GR, and make sure it's loaded and click on Auto Load. And to import, go up to T6GR and import T6GR file. So the first thing it will want is the T6GR file itself, so just select the T6GR file, and it's going to open up another one, and it wants the folder with the models that you just extracted, so just go to where all your models extracted to and hit the incorrectly titled save button. And as you can see down here, it will start reading the file and importing all the animations. And now that this is finished importing, we can look around and we can see our gameplay. So then if you want to import this to Unreal Engine 4, you can go up to here and do export for UE4, and that will export everything for you. So just make sure you have the importer installed by going up to here, make sure you have it enabled, or if you don't have it, just install it like so, and hit this and install that, and that'll be installed. So the import process for Blender is very much the same as Maya, just with like one slight difference, which is the place where you put the folder for your models is just down here instead of as a separate thing. So just go to your models folder, copy that into here, go to your T6GR file, and hit that. I like to open the console just so that you can keep an eye on the progress of the import. But once you hit import, as you can see, it's now reading all the frames and importing the models and the animations. And as you can see, all our animations have imported correctly. So now if you want to use this in Unreal Engine 4, you can go File, Export, Export T6GR as FBX, and it will just go through and it will export each entity as a separate file, and it will just rename all the skeletons and handle all that for you. So make sure this is empty, otherwise it can cause problems, and then export. And that's all finished, so you can close this now. So now I'll show you how to import to Unreal Engine. If you've just skipped to this section, you do need to go back and watch either the import from Maya or Blender part of this tutorial, as it is required to use Unreal Engine 4. But if you've already done that, then you can open Unreal. Okay, so here we are in Unreal, and for this tutorial I'm going to assume that you already know how to import maps, because T6GR has nothing to do with importing maps, that's a whole separate thing. So I'm just going to work off the assumption that you already know how to do this and how to import them at the correct scale and all that. So if you don't have an understanding of how Unreal works with skeletons, I'll give you a brief overview right now. I'll just create a folder for the tutorial. So the way Unreal works with skeletons is you'll have one skeleton asset, which lots of models all use for their skeleton. You wouldn't want to import two COD player models and have both of them using their own separate skeleton. So what we're going to do is we will import the first file, and for the first time we do it, we're just going to import the model and the skeleton. We're not going to import the animations just yet. So just import that. So here we have the model, and this is the skeleton. So I'm just going to make a new folder for the model, and I'm just going to move everything in there except for the skeleton. And I'm just going to rename the skeleton to T6 player, and this is just going to be the skeleton that we use for every player model. So I'm just going to make a new folder for this one, so I call it model 1, and just going to move everything in there. So now when you want to use a different model, it's very similar but it's a little different. So we're going to import the next one, but now instead we're just going to select the skeleton and we're going to go T6_player. So just select that one, and we're going to import that. So now I will import an animation, and I will just import entity1. So when you're importing animations, make sure you turn off import mesh and just make sure it's set to T6 player. So just import the animation, and that's all good. So depending on whether you use Blender or Maya, when you just grab the model and put it in the world, it's either going to be really small if you use Blender or really big if you use Maya. That's just because Blender uses meters for a unit and Maya uses centimeters, but don't worry about the size because once you have the animations playing, they will all be at the correct size, so don't worry about that. So we're just going to add a level sequence, just save that here. So now we're just going to grab this player model that we've just added and drag it into the sequence, and add the animation, which will be this one. And now just make sure that the model's location is set to 0, 0, 0, and as you can see, now the model is in the world right where it should be. So you just repeat this process for any entity that you need. It will be the same for view models and grenades and everything, just as long as you get the skeletons right. Make sure anything that has a different skeleton, you are using a different skeleton asset. So all players should have the same skeleton asset, all view arms should have the same skeleton asset, and so on and so forth. And I will just show you how to do view arms, it's very much the same. I'll just do the arms for now. Now make sure, if it's set to T6 player and this is your first time importing it, set that to nothing, and we are just going to import the mesh without any animations. Just the same way that we did the players before. So take the skeleton that's imported, and I'm just going to rename that to T6 view arms. And I'm just going to select everything else and move it into here. And we'll import it again, but this time turn off import mesh and set it to T6 view arm and just hit import, and now we can put that in the sequence. So it's the same to get the arms. We are just going to drag them into the world, drag them into the sequence, okay, and now we can just add the animation to the sequence. We're just going to grab a new camera. You've got your camera here and the view arms. We're just going to grab the camera and attach it to tag_camera. So do that, set everything back to 0, and now if we look through that camera, it's all attached properly and it'll be nice. So that's pretty much the same process for every entity and animation. So just do that for all the characters and all the models that you need. And then for stuff like weapon attachments, you don't really need to import an animation most of the time. You can just import the model and attach it to the weapon itself. And to do that, you would just have your object, make sure it's set to movable, and then attach it to the bone. So say I wanted to attach it to the hand, I would just do something like wrist right. And as you can see, now this cube is attached to the wrist. So you would just do that, but for weapons, and you would just attach the model of the attachment to the weapon and position it to be correct. And that's pretty much finished. So I hope you enjoyed, and I look forward to seeing what cool stuff you make. And of course, thank you for all the support, everyone. Cheers.